Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my Necromancer build for the Dragonhold patch. And this is a special build for you guys because this is something that I personally have not played before, but I really wanted to try this patch, especially since we have the tank meta moving into Dragonhold. I have been playing around with Divine's builds across the other classes, namely the Nightblade, so I brought it to the Necromancer to try a very squishy full Divine setup designed just to nuke everything that we see. And the end result was incredibly satisfying. I'm not gonna lie, not only did it have that insane firepower that I was looking for, but it also had much better durability than I thought it would for a full Divines build, and that's thanks to a few changes in the Dragonhold patch with potions and stuff as well. Now, I am going to give everybody that warning. This build is not for the faint of heart. It is very squishy, and it is very high risk, high reward, so keep that in mind when you guys watch the build video. A full build write-up is on my website at KristoferESO.com, a link in the description below, and without further ado, let's take a look at that build. So to begin, I am a Wood Elf on this bad boy. We are playing a high damage, high speed burst build. So Wood Elf and Orc are your best two race options for this build. I want to say Khajiit is also a really good option, and Redguard is going to be a great option too. Khajiit because we are playing a critically damage focused build. If you were Khajiit on this spec, you would have 121% critical damage on this build. But a non-Khajiit is going to be sitting at the 111% critical damage, which is very high for a Necromancer. And I think the speed that the Redguard and Wood Elf offer just give more utility to the build overall, while having just a little bit lower maximum burst than what a Khajiit could have. Now, taking a look at the stats, we are playing that big boy damage build, and our stats reflect that. We've got 10k maximum magicka. This is not a huge deal. We don't need a big mag pool at all. We have only 2 mag skills that we use, and only one of them we actually cast actively. The other one's just a buff. 20k health. Yeah, 20.5k health if you want to be generous. This is really low. You can make this higher by running a different food than the Lavafoot, Soup, and Salt Rice. But in my honest opinion, I think a build like this doesn't really benefit from you trying to get too bulky. You just want to focus on that higher sustain and that higher damage and burst healing power, and just avoid those big incoming combos as best you can. So if you guys want to try this build out and you need more HP, a food switch up to perhaps the Artaeum Takeaway Broth would be a good option here. But we are running the Lavafoot, so where our max HP is going to be very low. Now, the max stamina is sitting at 35k on our front bar, 6k on the back bar. But yeah, big max stam pool for the Necromancer. We're going to need our stamina for everything. It is our survivability, our damage, our healing, everything. So yeah, we got to have a big pool for this, I think, especially for this build in particular. Now, taking a look at the regens when we buff up as well, we're going to set the pet up and go for our potion. 772 magicka recovery, 370 health recovery, and then 2,590 stamina recovery fully buffed. Now, I will say one thing. We have quite a bit of stam sustain, but I think you could run more sustain on this build, especially if you want to try a build like this out that's going to be very squishy. Having higher sustain is just going to benefit getting used to that playstyle of being on your toes all the time. It'll give you more resource to work with. But I did play it on the lower sustain that I'm showing here, and it still worked very well. The maximum burst was absolutely deadly, so it's kind of up to the user what you guys want to do here. You can always change your glyphs on your jewelry to adjust the sustain. Now, the weapon damage on this build, when we buff up on the front bar, we've got 4,485. We do have major, minor brutality, as well as the infused bow on our back bar. So we're going to fully buff up to 5,500 weapon damage on this build. So a nice beefy amount of damage to go with our 35k stam. And the fact that this is our base stats going into the crit build, yeah, that's what makes this so deadly. Our critical chance is only 46% on our front bar, so that was an interesting choice that I kind of made with this build, was just to focus on critical damage versus critical chance, and I really liked the outcome because in PvP, the burst is what causes you to win those big fights, so if you have around that 50% crit rate, man, going for that crit damage is definitely the answer, I think. Now, something that you don't see in the stats here is the penetration of the build. We actually are a Necromancer and a Wood Elf, so we get 3k pace penetration from our passives just there. And then on top of it, we get the percent armor ignore from having a maul on our front bar as well. Now, like I mentioned, the critical damage on this build is sitting at 111% if you fully buff this build out. You don't have to run full Divines. You could go full Impen on this spec, and I'll talk about that when we get to the Mundus. Kind of up to the user. And if you did that, you would be sitting at 105% critical damage, which is still a lot of critical damage. Now, the resistances on this build, this is where the build gets a little funky because we are in full Divines, but we have pretty decent spell and physical resistance for medium armor, and this is just to kind of make up for the fact that we went for full Divines, and I'll show you guys how we got these values in a sec. But our buffed up spell resist is just shy of 24k, and our buffed up physical resist is sitting at 25k with 1543 critical resistance. I know this is super low, and this is because we have 0 Impen on. But these resistances, man, this is going to help make up for the lack of the Impen somewhat. You're definitely going to feel the squish, though, especially in the champion campaign. Now, taking a look at our Mundus, we, of course, are running the Shadow. With full Divines, we get 19% critical damage on this build. Now, the choice of Divines versus Impenetrable on this build, it really comes down to what do you want? Do you want to have that maximum burst possible and have every tank fear you, or do you want to still have that durability on your side as well and have a more all-around playable build? It's kind of up to the user. Honestly, after trying out full Divines, it was a lot of fun, and it opened up a few things that the Impen build couldn't offer, but I'm not going to lie, the Impen build is better. So it's up to you guys what you want to do here. If you want to commit to the full Divines traits, you can, but like I said, you'll be very squishy if you do. And then for the food we're using, we've got the Lavafoot Soup and Saltris. This actually is incorrect. It shows us on the food here the correct value for our Lavafoot. 5k max stam and almost 500 stamina recovery. Now, like I said, if you guys are feeling like you're too squishy on this build, you can switch this out for the Artaeum Takeaway Broth. That will give you about 3,000 to 4,000 more hit points, just giving you a bigger burst cushion. However, you won't hit as hard, and you'll have a little bit less sustain. So it is a give and take. And finally, for the potion we're using on this build, we have got the Essence of Health that restores maximum health, restores maximum stamina, and increases our physical resistance by 5,280 for the 47-second duration when we've got all our passives in here. This potion here is what allows us to kind of have the higher resists mixed in with the Mighty Chuden set where we get that one-piece armor line as well. Yeah, this is actually a really sweet potion. I like this because we don't need any real Magicka sustain on this build outside of our base. So, you know, we can just go for this instead of the max mag return, and this will just give us that additional armor, allowing us to focus our champion points on the spell resist side of things to kind of even the build out. This potion is also not super expensive to make, which is awesome too. And of course, the physical resistance buff given here does stack with our armor buff from our Chuden set as well. Now, taking a look at the gear that we're running on the build, guys, the first set that we've got is the Mighty Chuden. And we talked a little bit about this. This is going to give us that one line of 3,000 armor. Such a big deal. It's going to give us max health on the two-piece and then give us our armor buffs on the two-piece as well. The reason I went for the Chuden set is because Necromancer, honestly, for a class that ZeniMax didn't want to be super buff-heavy, it's incredibly buff heavy. You're just spending so much time summoning skeletons all the time, and you want to take advantage of your Necromancer skeleton passives, and the one that I decided to give up here was the armor buff and just get it from the Chuden set. We get a little bit of whammy out of going for the Chuden set, of course, because the two-piece offers that maximum health, which allows us to push lower maximum health on the spec than we would if we were running a different armor set or a monster set here. Now, the next set that we've got is the New Moon Acolyte, and this is on our front bar, our primary burst bar for the build. And this set is just such a huge damage set. We get the weapon crit, the weapon damage, the physical penetration, and the 481 weapon damage on the 5-piece. Of course, it makes all of our abilities cost 5% more. And this includes our ultimate, so it makes our ultimate very expensive on this build, but it is still a decisive ultimate. It just makes all of the burst on our front bar so intense. Yeah, just the best burst set we can run for this build in particular. Now, looking at the next set we've got, we've got Sensei's Bite on the back bar. This is going to be more critical damage bonus for the build. When we roll dodge, we get 12% additional crit damage for 8 seconds. And of course, because we can back bar this, it allows us to have that front bar damage swap too, which is really great. And we're playing a medium armor build that's very squishy. So we're going to be rolling a lot. You'll be spending a lot of time on your Sensei bar too. This is your primary defensive bar. So you will have this buff up most of the time. And then finally, the last set that we've got is the agility set, and this is here to just bulk up the maximum stamina, giving us a little bit more firepower and healing on the build. Now, taking a look at the traits for the build, the Sensei Bow is, of course, infused with the weapon spell damage enchant. Very important on our ranged weapon to have this, just to bulk up our outgoing damage and healing when we lead with that light or heavy on our bow. And then on the front bar, we have got the Nirnhoned Maul. You could go sharpened on the Maul here, but I think you want to go Nirnhoned for the burst heal on Rally. And Nirnhoned is really close to sharpened in terms of damage on a medium armor build anyway. So I think that you just get the best bang for your buck going for Nirnhoned. The poison that we've got here, of course, is the Brutality Draining Poison to give us that minor brutality buff on our build. And of course, it afflicts the opponent with minor maim, decreasing the damage that they deal as well. Now for the jewelry, we have got full infused with weapon damage. We are a glass cannon build. This is the glass cannon setup. And then for the gear, the same thing. We have got full divines with maximum stamina. And like I mentioned, if you want to go for impenetrable here, you can. Something I do want to mention about going for impen on the gear is that you should probably go either all impenetrable or all divines, and just make the decision if you want to be really squishy or if you want to have just a more well-rounded build. It's kind of up to the user, because if you go for just a couple divines, well, at 2 divines you only get 1% additional critical damage on the Shadow Mundus, and then each divines you add afterwards will give you an additional percent up to a maximum of 6. So mathematically speaking, you get the biggest bang for your buck with 7 out of 7 divines, and the worst bang with just 2 out of 7 divines. So I would say your best options are either full divines, full impen, or 2 impen and 5 divines if you want to get maybe the best of both worlds. Alright, so let's take a look at the abilities we're running on the build. The first ability we've got, of course, is Executioner. This is our primary kill move on the Greatsword bar, and man, this hits so hard. You guys will see some disgusting crits from this in the footage. The next skill that we've got is Critical Rush. And this is our primary gap closer, but because we're playing such a critically focused build, this is our primary spammable too. The guaranteed crit on this bad boy with our base critical damage means we can push out some serious hurt into people with just this ability. But you're definitely going to want to use this to combo with your other skills. We've got a 7.2, almost 7.3k tooltip on this bad boy. That is absolutely fantastic for this critically focused build. Now the next skill we've got is Camouflaged Hunter. This is here for that passive major savagery buff that it provides. It also is going to give us 3% weapon damage for being a Fighter's Guild skill. And then last but not least, we get the Minor Berserk when we crit on an opponent's flank, synergizing so well with our critically focused build, and of course the guaranteed crit from Crit Rush, just giving us more outgoing damage. And of course, this is going to be a stealth detect if we need access to one as well. Now, the next ability we have is Rally. This is your primary burst heal for the build, as well as access to the Major Brutality buff and the Minor Endurance buff. Both very important, as they are the primary stats kind of for this build, and the burst heal that Rally offers is so fantastic because, well, we're squishy. We need that burst heal. We don't have a huge hit point value, and if this crits, this is pretty much a full health heal every single time. Now, the next skill I've got is Mystic Siphon, and I took the Mystic Siphon morph instead of the Stamina morph because this one returns Magicka. The Mag Sustain on this build was good, but it just wasn't quite enough for what I wanted, so I took the Mystic Siphon morph, and it provided us with that supplementary sustain that I really felt like we were missing on the Magicka side of things. Now, you actually have the option of switching this out for the Mending version if you want to go for the Restoring Tether and go for the Stamina version for Restoring Resource. Now, this won't deal damage, but it will heal you instead, and it will increase your burst healing on the front bar, but you'll miss out on that 3% slotted damage on the front bar too. It's kind of up to you what you want to do. For a damage-focused build, I definitely think Mystic Siphon is the way to go. Now, for the ultimate, we of course have the Pestilent Colossus. This is just going to be an absolutely brutal ultimate for the build. It applies the major vulnerability, the 3 huge smacks. It's a massive AoE. You guys have seen it in action. The Big Daddy Necro Smash destroys everything that it hits, and we hit hard on this build. You'll see in the footage again, we just crush people with this ultimate, and if they survive it, they have the major vulnerability on them, which allows us to follow up with just destructive combos after that. Now, taking a look at our bow bar, the first ability we have is the Blighted Blast Bones, and I wanted to show you guys the tooltip on this on the Greatsword bar so you guys could see the fully buffed 18k Blast Bones on a critical damage build. That's a massive tooltip, and when we crit, this is going to just absolutely destroy people. Of course, this ability is a delayed burst skill. We got to summon the Blast Bones, and then it jumps at the target, which allows us to stack it with our other offensive skills for those huge Necromancer combos. And then if that all isn't enough, it applies Major Defile. So if you continue to cycle Blast Bones on your target, it is very hard for them to come back and heal out of that. Now, the next ability we've got is Magnum Shot, and this is our primary stun for the build. You have 2 options for the stun here. You can go for Magnum Shot, or you can go for the Fighters Guild Fear. Doesn't really matter what you pick. I like Magnum Shot because it deals damage as well, and the knockback synergizes really well with Crit Rush for that bonus damage. The only issue is that sometimes you can Magnum Shot your target, and Blast Bones will get a little confused, but that's more of a ZeniMax coding error than anything else. Nonetheless, a fantastic stun for the build. And then the next ability we've got is Resolving Vigor, and this is going to be our primary heal for the build. We got an 18k tooltip on this without a negative effect on us. This is going to go up to around 20k when we've got a dot on us. Really nice vigor for the build. I'm not going to lie, you can expect some pretty fat vigor crits from this spec, especially if you're going to pick Khajiit. And this is going to be kind of your primary heal for the build. On this spec, we're very squishy, so you want to keep your vigor up very often, almost preemptively vigor as well. It's a really good heal, but we've got to keep it up, otherwise we're just going to get destroyed. And this is going to make sure that we stay at full HP pretty much all the time. You want to stay at full HP on this build. Now, the next ability we have is Accelerate. This would be morphed to Race Against Time. I actually played all this footage without Race Against Time, so I did not have the snare removal and the immunity to immobilize that Race Against Time offers. I did, however, get the critical damage bonus that I really needed for the damage side of this build. So this is going to be great for, of course, that damage bonus. The major expedition that costs only Magicka, also just nice to relieve our stamina bar, and then, of course, the immunity to snare and immobilize. Very important for a PvP build in general. And then for the next ability, we have got the Spirit Guardian. This is a very important slot for the build. The 10% damage reduction is a must-have on such a squishy spec. It offers a decent amount of healing over time, nothing too terribly crazy, but it has been buffed in recent patches. And of course, it's going to be a summoned pet that's going to be up at all times, and it's going to give us that 200 Magicka and stamina recovery from our Necromancer passives just to keep this guy up. And that's very important to have, especially on a build like this where we're just kind of pushing our sustain and our damage to the limits of what we can do with it. And then finally, guys, for the ultimate, we have got Undo. Now, this, again, I don't have morphed because my Necromancer didn't have it fully morphed, but you're going to take the Temporal Guard morph here because that's going to give us a passive minor protection slot on the back bar. I played all the footage again without that 8% damage reduction, so that's something to keep in mind when you guys watch the footage. I don't have the snare removal, and I don't have as much durability as I should. But having that protection is going to be absolutely fantastic for the build, and then, of course, access to the teleport on a fast kite-based build. This is going to allow us to juke enemy players and survive things that we otherwise wouldn't be able to survive. Now, you do have another option for the back ultimate here, and it would actually be Reanimate. And I just say that Reanimate's a good option because if you're going to play this build in a group, which I think it would be absolutely great in a group, because if you take those deaths, someone can res you, and you have the firepower to burst like really tanky healers and stuff like that. But the Reanimate is just going to allow you to res all of your friends. And yeah, just a great group-friendly ultimate for the Necromancer in general. All right, so let's take a look at the champion points on the build, guys. Starting off in the tower tree, we got 44 Warlord, 11 Bashing Focus, and 5 in Sprinter. Big focus on Warlord here because we're going to get stunned and we got to break free. We also have to sprint and bash, but these aren't as important as our defensive traits, so we don't have a huge focus on them there. Now, taking a look at the Lover tree, we've got a nice stacked 64 Mooncalf, 15 Arcanist, and 43 in Tenacity. Big focus on Mooncalf. It is our primary sustain, followed up by Arcanist, because we have a little bit of mag recovery, and it is important for the snare removal. And then Tenacity. We do quite a few heavy attacks with this build. We really shouldn't, but, you know, having a bit of Tenacity here will just help your sustain in the long run. So, yeah. There you go. Now, moving on to the Shadow Mundus, we've got 44 Tumbling and 44 Shadow Ward. A nice even split here. We need to roll dodge and we need to break free. We're in medium armor, so we have a lot of passives from our armor going into roll dodge as well. Sorry, not break free. We need to block, but blocking is still very important too. Now, taking a look at the Apprentice, we have got 0. In the Atronach, we got the standard 81-39 for that burst tree. That's exactly what we want. The important passive we get, of course, is Tactician. Roll dodge to set an opponent off balance when we dodge their attack. Very, very powerful stuff because it synergizes with the Exploiter passive, increase our damage against an off-balance opponent by 10%. And of course, we can use a partial charged heavy attack to stun people, which just allows us to use a partial charged bow heavy weapon swap crit rush for a super nasty, super high damage combo that stuns your opponent. Now, taking a look at the Ritual tree, we have got 49 in Mighty, 50 Piercing, and 51 Precise Strikes. A nice even spread here again, just to get the most out of our offensive points in PvP. Even though we are a critically damage-focused build, having the even spread is just going to give us the biggest bang for our buck. And then that Last Stand passive, such a good passive to have as well. Get the Major Heroism when we drop below 20%. On this build, we're very squishy, and we have high healing power, so if we survive, we can likely come back and have that Major Heroism up. And then, of course, we get the Perfect Strike for that 9% weapon crit on top of our Exploiter. Now, moving on to the Steed Mundus, we have absolutely stacked it. 56 Ironclad, 44 Spell Shield, and 75 Resistant. I don't have to explain why we have so many in Resistant. We're in full Divines, of course. Spell Shield, we have 44 versus nothing in Medium Armor Focus. This is because we get that armor buff from our potion, so this is to help make up for the spell damage side of things. And if you can see here, that's why we're about 1k spell resistance short of our armor value. And then, of course, Ironclad to reduce the incoming damage we take from Burst. That is our biggest weakness by far on this build, so yeah, we've got to have it. Now, taking a look at the Lady Tree, we have got 32 Hardy, 43 Elemental Defender, and 20 in Thick Skinned. Again, I focused on the Elemental Defense side of things. This is actually going to help fix that lopsidedness where we have a little bit more physical than spell resistance, so our defenses against both should be roughly the same. A little bit better physical resist, I think, still, and then a little bit of resistance against damage over time. We've got to have some of this because we don't have the Purge. I mean, we could run Hexproof, but honestly, I don't think there's a good skill to switch out for it. But because Vigor is so powerful and the dots have been nerfed so hard this patch, we really don't need too terribly many points here. And then we've got nothing in the Lord. But if you guys want, I would say you could take the Thick Skinned out and put it in the Quick Recovery if you want a little bit more additional healing power. And that is the build, guys. Alright guys, let's take a look at that PvP gameplay. So like I said, we are playing in full Divines on this build, so we're very, very squishy. You guys don't need to do this in full Divines. It's really up to the user here. As it sits right now, Impen is way more powerful as a trait versus any other trait option for PvP. So I would recommend that if you're new to a build like this, maybe start with Impen and then upgrade to Divines later if you find you really love the build and you're getting comfortable with it. But moving on, we have got these yellow players coming back through the door here after we killed them on the siege. And look at that, Blast Bones into the crit rush, and we dropped the Colossus for the last tick. We didn't need the Colossus there. I dropped it mostly because we got that AoE splash. But right off the bat, the damage on this build is not to be messed with. From my experience playing it, there was literally nothing that we couldn't kill with it. I had one opponent that I thought was too tanky, but we had our food buff down. So I think that made a big difference as to why we were unable to bring him down just in my entire experience playing this build. So yeah, look at this. We've already got the 2 yellow players down. We get this guy with the stun there. The Blast Bones jumps on top, and he gets into his block before we get into the end of our combo there. And this enemy Necromancer here is a good example of a bulkier opponent. He's got good healing power, he's got powerful block, and just good all-around durability too. And we just keep rotating the Blast Bones on him here, and the Blast Bones is just great because it makes it hard for him to heal right back up to full health. But he is able to continue to tank it out. We right away go for the target shift onto the Sork in the back, just shifting to the squishier target. He dumps the negate down, which is actually a really good call. The negate will stop my Blast Bones from attacking. Even if it jumps into the negate, it'll just freeze. So I kite back inside, get a nice stun there into the Necro Smash, crit rush into the Executioner, a nice clean combo to bring that guy down. And then we hit this guy with the stun into the Executioner as he has the major vulnerability, and we bring the tank down with a nice burst as well. So I think that first clip did a good job just kind of highlighting the offensive power of this build when you're able to get some nice clean rotations. So let's look at how this build does when we don't have the opportunity to get such clean rotations and we've got a little bit more pressure on us. So we're outside this enemy keep here. We get a good magnum shot on that guy into the crit rush, the Executioner, and he had his shields down. The 17k crit on that Executioner, I mean, we just punish him for the mistake, and we just kite back outside and try to pick a few more targets here. The Nightblade pops into stealth, so I just come right back around the cubby hole, reset my buffs here, and get the tether on my corpse as well. One thing about this build is the mag sustain on it is just kind of bare bones. Like, you have just enough sustain to do what you need, so I think it's important to make sure that we can get the tether when we need it. Again, we get a full crit... a full crit splat on that Sork as he got res there, and we just bring him down right away. The enemy werewolf here trying to go for the res. We hit him with the stun. There's the Blast Bones into the crit rush, and we put decent damage into him, and he tries to heal it away. That Blast Bone Defile just causing him to eat up a lot of his magicka there. He's actually taken quite a bit of damage just from our Blast Bones exploding. He continues to retreat back towards the Zerg, and I'm just going to do a turnaround here and just not turn my back to the entrance into this keep, because this is a blue group taking a yellow keep, and I'm a red player, so yeah, look at all these blue players pour in. I don't want to get sandwiched if I can help it, especially on a build like this. Normally when I play such a squishy build, we'd have something like Stealth or Mistform, and on this build in particular, we have to be very careful with our positioning so we don't get smacked really bad by a Zerg like that. This Sork, again, the third time he shows up and doesn't have his shields up, and we just punish him so fast with the stun into the Executioner. And we got 2 more players appearing there. The Nightblade actually opening out of stealth there. You saw how fast our health dropped when he opened, and we had to respond quickly to survive that gank. We get a nice stun with the knockback there, and try to get him with the Necro Smash. He rolls out of it, and the loading screen, we still crit rush on top of him and get him with the 5k Executioner through his block to finish him off. And now we've just got more blue players coming out of the keep and into the tower here. This enemy Sork got rezzed again. We put him down with the stun into the Executioner crit rush. He can't deal with it, and we just wait in the bottom of the tower here as more blue are going to start pouring in. We've got a friendly red player that has shown up as well, and this guy here we just start working. He's very, very bulky, so I switch to the other Templar target, hit him with the stun there. We've got the Blast Bones down too. A nice explosion from the Blast Bones, but look at that damage we take. We have to respond really fast with the stun break off of that Vampire Tether that stunned us there. A really deadly stun in particular for a build like this because it is undodgeable. It will get caught in the roll by it, and we managed to get into the Vigor, and we just keep kiting around and rotating on these guys. Now, a big part of playing this kind of build is you don't want to just sit in front of a bunch of players. You want to make sure that you're always attacking them, and they're not just attacking you and you're trying to heal it away. So here we finally found a decent position to just take this one Templar at the bottom here, but look at this, man. He's got a lot of bulk on him. I mean, there's a possibility we could bring him down, but I'm not going to bother wasting my time when we've got so many other blue players here. He's not putting out much damage at all on our Divine's build, so we come up to the top here to come help the other player here. I drop the Necro Smash, and we get the crit rush on top of this guy into the Executioner, and the fall damage actually ends up finishing him off as he takes a bad roll off the edge there. And now we've got just this enemy Templar there. I hit him with the knockback there. go for the crit rush on top of him. The friendly player, Necromancer, as well, going for some pressure, but this enemy Templar just goes into his bubble and kites away. I am just looking for targets here. If we find a really tanky target, I'm not going to commit to trying to put them down if I don't have to. We're just going to look for the squishier players and bring them down as we can, and we try to stop the res there. Unfortunately, the blue players react well. We kite back into the tower here, and they kind of pile up on the other red player here. Unfortunately, he takes a lot of pressure, but he takes them to the top of the staircase here, and yeah, just keeps cutting around the tower. Here we go. We got them all in this staircase. I get caught by that stun, go for the rally into the vigor. We just quickly get the loading screen again there, as there's some Zerg fighting going on outside the keep, and we're just going to continue to kite around on the inside here and just try our best not to get hit. Notice how we're continually cycling that vigor. We get a good stun on this guy, the crit rush, try to get him with the executioner, but he ends up dodging the back end of the combo there, dropping him to just like 1%. I jump off the edge, commit to trying to get the kill, but eventually he gets that huge Templar heal, and we're unable to capitalize on that one there. The enemy blue player getting stunned around the corner by the friendly player. I try to go for damage on him, but again, the blue Templar here just throwing mad heals down right away, and we're just going to have to be careful. We're a little bit lower on stamina after exhausting so much resource trying to finish that kill, but we've got the Necro Smash. I throw it down in the corridor and crit rush through it, taking advantage of the LOS that big ultimate kind of provides. And I am going to leave the rest of the fight for you guys to enjoy. I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, hit that like button, and if you're new here, hit that subscribe button. Stick around for more ESO content. Be sure to check out KristoferESO.com for a full written guide of this build and all the other builds that I've got, and more to come. Check out my Twitch in the description below if you want to catch some live gameplay. We are sponsored by What the Fast. They're a VPN for gamers. They give me better ping to my favorite games, and they're free to try for the first 30 days. No credit card to sign up, so no harm, no foul if it doesn't give you what you're looking for. And then last but certainly not least, if you guys really love the show and you want to help support it, you can always become a patron on Patreon. Without you guys' help, I wouldn't be able to do this job, so a huge thank you to everybody who's helped out, and a huge thank you to everyone just for tuning in and watching. I hope that you guys enjoyed again, and as always, have a great night, everyone.